Welcome to session 10, Project Shuttling and the Introduction to Production Management. Today we'll look at how we schedule tasks or activities in any production campaign. So we captioned this session as Project Shuttling. Lots of the time we look at projects as huge engagements where we undertake production of items, or maybe it's a whole big something, but you can narrow projects down to even our daily activities. Waking up, going for lectures, going about our normal activities, we plan. If probably you have to go to class, go through the market, buy some books, go to the library and do some studies, you have specific time frames allocated to each of these activities or tasks. And so it's a project. At the end of the day, you evaluate your performance and find out whether indeed you were able to achieve what you wanted to do or not. Otherwise, you see whether you can reschedule others or stuff. And so don't not consider projects here as huge undertakings that maybe we are building what's it called, a spacecraft, or we are traveling to the moon or something. No, just basic daily activities. So we're saying that a project is a unique or one-time operational activity or effort. Okay. Now, project management is the management of work to develop and implement an innovation or change in an existing operation. Okay, so it could be a new one, it could be on an already existing one. Probably even undertaking something to improve on the process, or a project to improve on an already existing one is a project. Now, so in project scheduling, it includes activities of planning the project, controlling the project activities, which are subject to the resource and budget constraints to keep the project on schedule. Now, like I said earlier, every project or every activity or task that we set out to do have certain boundaries. Okay, if you need to go to the library, if you need to go through the market, if you need to go for lectures, you do notice that there's a certain time constraint. You don't have your entire life to go to the library. You don't have the entire day. You know that a lot of things are present on you, and so you want to kind of schedule each of these tasks so that you can meet them one point or the other efficiently. And so for every project, there is always a certain constraint, and it's either resource or it's budget. Now, our resources could be human resource, it could be time resource, it could be material resource, it could be anything you can think of. And then the budget is also just referring to the financial constraints that we put on any project. Now, when you consider all these, you still would have to make sure that your project is completed on schedule, or you meet whatever you plan to do. Now, if you're unable to meet your project on schedule, it comes at extra cost. Now, anyone who has engaged in any kind of project or managing any activity, it will tell you that anything that you'd go beyond your schedule would come at extra cost to you. Okay, so what are some of the activities that are engaged in planning the project? You must clearly define the objectives of the project. You must identify the project activities, which is very important. You must always know what entails this project. If you wake up and you say, what is going to go into my day? Everyone wakes up in the day and thinks of what things he or she wants to do in the day. That is listing or finding out the activities in your day, and that is a project. You must establish precedence, relationships. In what order do you want to get these activities done? When do you want to go to the market? Should it be before lectures or after lectures? When do I go to the library? When do I sit up to study? All these things are activities that make up a project of your day. Now, you need to make time estimates. How long do I want to spend in the library? How long do I want to spend in the library? How long do I want to spend moving from home to school or to class, and all these? They're just basic things that we do day in, day out, but we don't really see them as projects. Now, you need to determine the project completion time. By what time do I want to finish all of these activities put together? Now, we must also compare the project schedule objectives. So now, for each objective, you must also, for each activity, there is a certain objective. So when we put the entire project together, there is an objective for the project. You also want to compare them to find out whether you have met those objectives or not. And also, you must also determine your resource requirements to meet these objectives? What do I need to go about these tasks? Okay, so the other set of activities or other activity under project scheduling is the project control. Now, the primary focus of control is to, one, make sure that you maintain the project schedule and budget. You would not want to have started a project where you already have planned when to complete it and what resource you need or what financial obligation there should be to that project, and at the end of the day you go beyond that. That we'll refer to that as cost overruns, and that is something that no business or no organization would want. And so when businesses embark on projects or embark on production exercises, they want to make sure that whatever they want to do is within a certain budget or a certain limit which they have predetermined. Now, you must also make sure that the project is completed on time. There must always be a time frame within which the project in general would be completed. Now, the key elements of project control are time management, cost management, and then performance management. Now, you want to ensure that time is used judiciously so that that time schedule that you have for yourself is met. You also make sure that the cost is managed effectively so that you do not overspend. Well, if you underspend and you still deliver the quality time, that's good news, that's awesome. But we won't, no project manager or no firm would want to tolerate cost overruns. And then performance management, making sure that our performance of whatever, whether our human resource or what, in every aspect, our performance generally is on point, and we are getting the highest possible performance at all times. Now, and the time management would monitor the individual activity schedules and make frequent updates. So that is it. So every activity, if an activity is supposed to be done within 10 minutes or within a day or within 2 days, you're making sure that everything that needs to be put in place to ensure that the activity is completed in 2 days or 10 minutes is in place. Now, you must also make frequent updates, just to ensure that we are within time, or we would not meet it. And then for the cost, revision of cost estimates and development of budget updates, with time. So closely tied to time management, delay schedules, increases costs. So exactly. So these two, they work hand in hand. Once anything happens, now someone may not understand how can we not meeting our schedule culminate into increased costs. Now, if we have a project that we schedule to complete in 3 days and it goes to 5 days, those are 2 extra days that probably you're going to have people working, or you would have to get extra power. And once the 2 days, you're going to pay overtime, and you didn't plan to pay overtime, that becomes extra cost to you. Okay, so under performance management, what we do basically here will be under monitoring the project and developing time status projects to make sure that the goals are being met and the plan is being followed. And so for each stage, there's a certain milestone. So we check whether we are meeting what our milestones we have gradually, and then overall it will determine what our performance, our general performance will be. So it says that it compares planned target dates for events and work completion with dates actually achieved. And so, for instance, if we plan completing an activity in 2 days and we complete in a 1.5 day, well, that's some good performance, isn't it? Provided we are still getting the exact quality or the required output that we want, that's okay. But if we plan 2 days and we are finishing 2.5 days, 3 days, then you could give you a fair idea that performance is quite low. Now, under project scheduling, there are measures of performance. We use the deviation from the schedule, the resource usage, and then the cost overruns. Now, if deviations are large, it means our performance is quite poor again. And also, if our resource usage, we use more resources than we actually planned for, again, that is also another indicator of low performance. And also when we experience cost overruns, cost going beyond what we expended or what we planned. That is also another measure of performance. Now, under scheduling, we have some techniques that we use. We have the old technique, or very known technique, sorry for my choice of word, not old as in obsolete, but a very known technique we call Gantt chart, which is also used. Very awesome, in fact, it was the very earliest kind of tools that we use to represent projects, show how activities are supposed to be scheduled and everything. But over time, new techniques have also popped out, which we call the CPM and then the PRT. The CPM representing the critical path method, and then the PRT represents the project evaluation review technique. These are very popular techniques now in our current age and date that project managers or organizations use to actually show precedence relationships, to show how project activities are supposed to be scheduled. The good thing is these techniques are visualization tools, and they help us to visually see or visualize how each activity in the project corresponds with each other or relates with each other, or which we call the precedence relationship. They go a step further to show the precedence relationship more clearer than the Gantt chart. So we are going to delve more into these two, the critical path methods or techniques, and then the project evaluation review techniques as well. Okay, so for the CPM and PEP, they both use what we call nodes and acts. Okay, so the nodes represent the project activities, and then the acts, or what we call the arrows, what you see in there. The nodes are those circular stuff with the numbers in them, and then the acts are the branches are the arrows you find connecting those nodes. Okay, so in representing or in using in doing these activities in using the CPM and then the PRT, we have two methods of representing information using these techniques. We have one we call the activity on act technique, and then the activity on node technique. Either ways, all you want to do is just represent the precedence relationship between this. But to be fair, the activity on node is relatively more simpler compared to the activity on act. Doesn't mean that the other one is difficult. It's not difficult. It just needs a little time to assimilate. But we'll look at them and then try and make use of them, which one that works better for whoever is using them. The concept of the critical path. So we want to look at the two techniques separately. The CPM, or the critical path method, which we normally call says that a path is a sequence of connected nodes that leads from the start node to the finish node. And so when you have a set of activities which we represent with the nodes, either you can use a square node or a circular node, and then you connect them with arrows, which we call the branches or the acts. When you take one dimension from the beginning to the end, where you have arrows connecting a certain number of nodes from the first one to the last one, we refer to that as a path. Now, a network may have several paths, and so we can have multiple paths in a network. But the point we want to drive home here is that the longest path in the network determines the total time required to complete the project, and that is what we call the critical path. So the longest path on a network, right, is the critical path. So normally activities on the critical path are referred to as the critical activities. Now just think about it this way. Any activity or anything that has the adjective critical means it's something that is very important, right? So if you go to the hospital and they say this unit is for patients in critical conditions, it means that those patients are those that are the types that we would not want to take chances. So we want to really consider them critically. And that is what this concept is. It's like all those activities on the critical path are those activities that you cannot afford getting them delayed. Once they are delayed, the entire project would also get delayed, which you do not want to, because we've seen previously. So in the critical path, we have certain terms associated with this technique. We have what we call the completion time, which represents with T. We have the earliest start time and then the earliest finish times, We also have the latest start times and then the latest finish times. Very easy stuff. And so we'll see how this turns out to be. Now, in determining the critical path, there are two procedures. We have something we call the forward pass and then the backward pass. Now, the forward pass is just the addition of the earliest start times and then the duration of each activity until, so you just keep repeating it till we get to the end. And then the backward pass is just the reverse of whatever we did going forward. And so you take the latest start times minus the duration, and you keep doing it for each activity until you come back to the previous time. And then we also look at some other terms which we call the slacks. Now, slacks we could refer to as surplus times. So if you have a 0 slack time, it means that activity has no time to spare, and so you cannot afford to delay that activity. So you would see that by the time we are done with this concept, all activities with slacks of 0 are those that we refer to as critical activities, and those with slacks of positive values other than 0 are those ones we call non-critical activities. So for in doing the forward pass, we say for each activity, compute the earliest start time and then the earliest finish time. So we'll see this in subsequent examples. And then, so let's take how do you call it, an example, and then go through it so you can understand how we do the forward pass and then the backward pass techniques.